All right, everybody, welcome to Innovation in Motion. I'm Kevin Long. I cannot believe we're starting this on time. This is incredible. This is the most complicated panel we've ever done, and yet it was the easiest, thanks to these superstars for helping us out today. So I'm excited to dive in and get going with the panelists today. Just as an overview into the mind of the nerd, we have with us today 3 superstar nerds and 1 nerd translator. And what we're going to be doing is building an app in an hour, but then also talking through the different parts of projects of what you need to be thinking about when you build an app. Now, I realize everyone in the audience probably thinks we can build an app in an hour. We probably can. We want to build something a little bit more fun. So think about this as one of those really, really great infomercials where they're cutting up onions and they're cutting up potatoes and they put it in the oven and they open the oven and it's done. So we're going to have to do a little bit of fast forward time. But in between that, Dave is going to be helping us think through when you actually do your projects, what do you want to be thinking about when you line up your team? What do you want to be thinking about with your language choice, your frameworks choice, et cetera, et cetera. For non-technical people, this is going to be really helpful. And the presentation will be available to everyone after. If you learn all of these words and you memorize all these definitions, you will be able to speak nerd. Not fluently, but you will be able to hang out with nerds and be able to have good, strong conversations. Does that sound accurate, you guys?
Yep.
Okay, these guys.
That's Kevin's life goal.
Yeah, this is my life goal. I've been working on this for 6 months, and this 1 hour is gonna accelerate like 6 months worth of practice. So, okay, with that said, raise your hand if you had some food or some beer. Okay, round of applause to the sponsors. Actually want to have the sponsors come up, and let's start with the sponsor that brought us food, Digital Aptitude. Round of applause for Digital Aptitude and the meal. Thanks for making it happen. Hold on, let's do a mic check on that, Paul.
So I'm supposed to hit the mute button so people can hear me? What an odd concept.
Let me see it, man.
I got it. No, I'm good.
You got it?
Yeah, I was just being funny. It just didn't go over well. My name is Anthony Miller. I'm the managing director at Digital Aptitude. We are a full-service digital marketing agency located here in Portland. I want to use my 30 seconds here, which is now 45, to tell you about our digital marketing summit that we have coming up this Thursday. Actually, registration, we're at 170 people. We have 150 seats and 50 standing. So if you want to get registered for that, I would encourage you to register now. It's free, and you can find that on our website, digitalaptitude.com / make sure I don't mess it up, PDX-Summit. PDX-Summit. Jenny Villobos of our team will be talking about building great brands with social media marketing. I will be talking about the 5 elements of a successful digital marketing campaign. And Zeke Camisio, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, our founder, will be talking about using web analytics to make smart business decisions. So it really should be a great session. Hope to see a lot of you there. It should be fun. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. Spencer from Core Source and Karen, who brought us beer, come on up.
I hit the button for you.
Anybody who's drinking beer or soda, it's from Core Source. All right, you guys, come up front. Come up front.
Hey, everybody. This is about as close as I get to being a nerd. I've been coming to these events for a while, and I love talking to everybody about their projects and what you're doing. So I'm with Core Source, and we're a business intelligence firm with an expertise in data analytics, software development, and technical staffing. We work with companies in the Portland area like Tripwire, Card Compass, BPA, and we were just named by Burst as the Partner of the Year out of 50 companies worldwide. So in addition to working with software companies on embedded analytics for their software platforms, we also help with resourcing for technical staffing, and Karen's going to talk a little bit about that.
I'm part of the technical staffing division at CoreSource, and we, of course, are interested in partnering with you. We're looking at candidates. We have about 75 plus openings. We work all the way from desktop support to the directors of IT and infrastructure, mobile, web, application. We work with companies. Our goal is really to find the right match where candidates can thrive and businesses can grow. And does anybody want a nerd? Anybody a nerd here that wants screen cleaners?
Oh, I told her it was dangerous to throw it in this crowd. I told her. I warned you. Someone's eye's going to get poked out. Paul's freaking out. All right, you guys. Whoa, there you go. Karen, you didn't listen to me. All right, thanks so much, CoreSource, for bringing the beer. Really appreciate it. I got a couple of these nerd glass cleaners that we're going to be handing out with the big question of the day. Puppet Labs is a great company. We're all sitting in Puppet Labs right now. They give us this space every single month. They let us invade their office. So big thanks to Puppet Labs. TIO is also a great sponsor of this event. Special thanks to Paul Collett for filming and video. If you ever need video, please talk to Paul. And the last person to come up will be Kevin from Crowd Compass to announce what does Crowd Compass do and talk about Crowd Compass job openings and why Crowd Compass is the greatest company in Portland.
How you doing? I'm Kevin from Crowd Compass. You may remember me from previous Innovation in Motions, building community through mobile.
Yep.
The benefit of working at Crowd Compass, as Jackson or Dave can point out, is you get to be a panelist. I think that's about 5 or 6 of us have been up here now. But yeah, we're always hiring. Crowd Compass makes mobile apps for events and conferences. So we have, job openings across the board, developers, iOS, Android, server. I'm the team lead for UX, so any designers looking for work come out. It's crowdcompass.com/careers or /jobs. I don't remember which one. If you figure that one out, that's your first test if you figure it out.
Crowdcompass.com/careers.
Careers. That's it.
All right. Thank you. Thanks very much. Round of applause, Crowd Compass. Okay, a few quick announcements here. Someone lost their glasses. They are red and
I think you should swap out for those.
And sparkly.
I think that would be an innovative upgrade.
I might innovate that halfway through. All right, if you're using Twitter, #InPDX, live streaming, you can always catch Innovation in Motion at livestream.com/Innovation in Motion, but then you don't get to come here and have PBR, so it's not as fun. If you need video, talk to Paul Collett. Special thanks to our sponsors again. Let me do a quick introduction here. Dave Shanley, sitting to my right. Dave is the founder and chief nerd at Crowd Compass, builds mobile apps for events and conferences. Dave, thanks for being here.
No problem.
Cody.
I didn't realize that I was going to be on the panel. I thought I was just responsible for roping the candidates into the panel.
Yeah.
And then I realized that I was actually going to be on the panel.
Yeah, I was like, no, you volunteered,
That's
actually.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So we're happy to have Dave here. Cody, to Dave's right, Cody. Cody, what's the name of the Disney app that you built?
Disney World.
Disney World. So if I search Disney World, holy shit. Okay, that's incredible. Search Disney World, and that's Cody. Cody also does great things like digital stuff for Nike and a bunch of other awesome companies. Thanks for being here, Cody. Jackson, in addition to being my life coach, is a 13-year-old superstar who decided to drop out of high school and become a superpower programmer and makes more money than me, which pisses me off. Welcome, Jackson. Thanks for being here. All right. So with that said, we're going to do the quick question, and then I'm going to hand this over to Dave, and we're going to get into this. So there's a lot of innovators in the world, not just in tech, and for a CoreSource nerd pack that you have to hand out to other people of glasses cleaners, who is this innovator? What? Iggy Pop? Close. It's Iggy Shanley, Dave Shanley Pop. Look at that. That's what Dave looks like when he gets his T-shirt off. But Scott, you're the one that got it closest, so I'm going to give these to you. Oh, no? I'm going to throw them. I'm sorry. Spencer told me I had to do this. Everybody duck. Oh, my God. Okay, there they are. Woo! Okay, with that, I'm going to hand this over to Dave, and we're going to innovate and switch spots.
All right, we're going to switch spots.
And your keynote is behind there, so hit escape. and then look up on the screen, and you can see it. You can see it hidden magically.
All right. So these guys are going to build an app in an hour.
You better hurry up.
And you're probably here. You're probably here because you have similar aspirations, maybe, and you want to know where to get started. So you start with a problem statement, right? You need an overview of your project. What are you trying to accomplish? Kevin has a problem. Kevin can't remember all of the employee names at Crowd Compass.
There's so many of them.
You know, so and we thought, you know, other similar large growing organizations have this problem as well. And so we thought, so you want to put out a hypothesis, right? What are you testing? Okay, so a high level view of what you're trying to accomplish, and then how are you going to test that? We're putting out there that a mobile app is the best solution to this. Kevin's always on the move. He's hardly sitting at his desk doing work. So we thought, you know, getting into his pocket's really the right way to go. And, you know, so we also thought that, okay, so we're going to build this thing. It's going to allow Kevin to test his knowledge and improve his knowledge of the employees at Crowd Compass. But we want to set baseline benchmark around what success looks like. And success looks like we increase the score by 5%. Each time they play, and we want nearly all players to get 100% right on the quiz. So we're building Face Compass. So we're ready to begin development, right? We got our problem statement. Boom, we're gonna like jump right into development. Go.
So basically, you first you have to gather your requirements, make sure you're programming towards those. I usually create some sort of solution to the problems that are proposed, so I might come up with different portions. So I'm going to display some scores among the employees, so I'm going to have something that handles scores, something that takes care of all the information going back and forth between the server, something that displays UI to that person. Once I have those pieces in my head, or even better, on some sort of document that I can follow, then I start building the scaffolding and basis of the project.
What's even better than that is going forward and validating your market. You want to make sure that what you're building is what people want to use. So you've got your problem statement, you've got your hypothesis, and before you dive into the actual coding, you want to go through, validate the market. Cody mentioned MVP requirements. That's minimum viable product. That's defining, you know, the least work that you can do that still ships value that people can use. You want to build your team, design guidelines. We'll talk about all these things here.
What about team, Dave? Going back, I'm just curious, like, who are these guys? So Cody's the front-end developer?
Cody's an iOS developer, native apps for iOS.
Okay, what does that make Jackson?
That makes Jackson a back-end developer in this scenario, but he's more well-rounded, full-stack JavaScript developer.
Which we're going to talk a little bit about.
We will
today.
talk more about that.
Okay.
Yeah. So you want to validate your market. So we went out and did, you know, potential customer interviews. Who are our customers? Our customers are employees. And 89% of the people we survey 40 people. 89% want to know everybody's name. 81% said that they'd use an app to improve their knowledge, right? So great. That's like some validation that we can go out and get started. And I think most people actually miss this step. A lot of people go right into the building. You know, they've got this vision, it's really exciting. Just, I'm going to start building it. It's best to go through and validate your market. Now, minimum viable product, we mentioned that a little bit. You want to define the problem. You want to define the top level things that you're trying to achieve, like the different components, and break that down, and not think so much about solutions, right? The developers, they'll handle the solutions. They're very, very, very good, very creative at finding solutions to problems. So don't dive down into the like super, super detail. You want to describe what it is that you want to achieve and work with the developers to meet those ends. If you get down into the weeds, you'll be creating kind of a path that will set them on the wrong direction and can lead to project failure. I personally like the given, when, then structure, and we can see that here. We use Trello to set up the requirements for this project. This might be a little bit hard to see, But
Can you talk through like what are the names of the 4 different categories on this?
yeah, so we've got the must-have list. So these are the things that the face compass, which we're going to use at Crowd Compass to test the knowledge of the employees, right? It's got to have face photos. It's got to have a list of names. We've got to have a point system. There's other things like iOS distribution certificate, game mechanics. So kind of the high-level components that we know we need to get done. And then there's things that are nice to have, like a server or a leaderboard, authentication. And so you kind of break that down. And these guys, as we go through the process, can move those in from, start with the must-have list and move that into the doing and then the done section.
Okay.
And this is what, like a given when then, this is what a requirement would look like. You can see that it's pretty high level and it doesn't say anything super specific. It's more describing, a basic function, a basic component of the application. So it's going to be, presented with a face of the employee and they're going to choose that.
So you're just running through every action step that's going to happen in the app at like a really high level, at the most basic level.
Yeah, and where people usually fall down here is they just sort of drill into, it's got to do this. And they don't think about the preconditions, which is the given. What has to happen before you get into that step, and then dive into the when this happens, and then the outcome, the thing that you want it to actually achieve. Seems really simple, but you'd be surprised at how many people miss those pieces. And it creates a lot of confusion when you hand it over to the developers, and then instead of paying them to do work, you're going to be paying them to ask you lots of questions.
Okay.
All right. So these guys are going to go through, and these are some of the technical development tasks that they're going to get started on, and they're going to interject when they have this ready to go. So Cody's like I said, is on the iOS native app because we said we wanted to build this as a native application so that Kevin has it in his pocket. He's going to have to create a new project. There's a bunch of application scaffolding that he needs to put in place, networking layer that he has to build out, UI that he has to design and build out. Jackson, at the same time, on the back end, is going to stand up a little Hello World server, get the database connections going, database adapter, and we'll explain this stuff in more detail. Application endpoints. So the mobile app's actually going to talk to the backend database, the backend server, and Jackson's going to do the thing that all developers do, which is struggle, iterate, and struggle a little bit more.
So these are the high-level points that Cody's going to work through and Jackson's going to work through, and then they're going to call it out when they get to that point, and then we're going to check in on it.
That's right.
Okay.
So go.
Okay.
We're building.
All right, let's jump to the next thing. So when you guys get to some of those points, let us know.
So the important thing, so you've got this great idea. You've got this problem statement, and you have your hypotheses, and you're starting to put together your minimum viable product requirements as far as what this thing you want it to do. So you need to start thinking about a team. And when you're thinking about a team, these are the terms that usually come up. Designer, that's pretty obvious. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But front end, like what does front end actually mean? When you need a front end person, what does that mean? What is a full stack developer? What is a mobile developer? What is a back end developer? And what are these components and how do they work together?
Okay, so Dave, start with front end and designer because I meet people and when I'm trying to learn how to speak nerd, they're like, I'm a designer. And that means that they go in and they know HTML and CSS and they can make websites.
Right.
And then I'm like, I'm a front-end developer, which means that they know HTML, CSS, and they can go in and make websites. And I'm like, oh, you're a designer? And they're like, no, I'm not a designer. And then designer say, you're a front-end developer? And they're like, no, I'm not a front-end developer.
Yeah.
So help us understand the difference between those two.
I think the big thing that you need to watch out for are people like this.
Yeah, you bastard.
These are the kind of people you need to watch out for. But having that in mind, designers are typically going to be more UI, like actual graphics oriented. There's a difference between UI and user experience. User experience is not necessarily pushing pixels around and building beautiful graphics. It's more about the actual experience. If I put this button in the upper right-hand corner and nobody can see it, it's not going to be obvious that it does the thing that I want them to do, right? You're not going to get outcomes that align with that. So some people do both, and you'll see that as we talk about these different roles. Some people do kind of cross over. There's blending between like designer, user experience. But someone on the design side is probably going to be less technical, even though they can do some technical mock-ups, than, say, a front-end developer that's going to be more technical. Front-end developers going to be responsible for building the user experience, is going to be more technical than a designer, but there's some blending there.
So if I meet a person who says that they're a front-end developer and that they're super good at design, is that common or very uncommon?
Somewhat common, but they're probably a better front-end developer than they are a designer.
Okay.
Probably.
So chances are when you go out and look for your design layer, is it easier for you to go out and find a designer and a front-end developer, or should you try to find those two things in one skill set?
I mean, like perfect world is finding the whole person, which is what we'll talk about. It's the full stack person. But realistically, you're probably going to find a designer that may get you to the first phase as far as like conceptualizing your product. Ideally, you would have a designer, someone plug in on the user experience side, and a front-end developer.
That would be the ideal.
That would be ideal. But you're probably, those roles are going to be separated.
Right.
I mean, if you're working with a small project and you're just getting off the ground, I don't think it's a terrible idea to go do some research and find like a contract designer, right? Someone that you don't have to bring them on as a full-time employee. Design's really critical to applications that you build today. So it's not diminishing design, but it gives you the flexibility to try them out. Does it work? It's very easy to go get designers on contract. It's a lot harder to get developers that are going to stick around on contract. Mm-hmm. So I recommend that. There's lots of sites, Dribble, Forest. There's a lot of areas on the web to go hunt those people down. And people are sharing their portfolio work, even on Twitter, right? People are sharing their portfolio work, and you can go through and like evaluate that before you reach out to them. And that's a great way of getting a hold of those folks. And typically, again, it's nice if they're in town, but you can work with them easily remotely.
Okay. Hey, you guys, Cody and Jackson, just so you know, if you guys get to certain things and you want to interrupt us, feel free. If you guys need to chat with each other, feel free. Yeah.
On the front end side, is my mic on? No.
Hey, Paul.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think
the question is, should you hire a designer first, or should you start going in and start developing stuff?
I mean, I think you should have a designer first, and it really sort of flows in order. But we're sort of building up to this. I think you should have a very high-level description of the project, right? Like I said, and then some assumptions that you're going to be testing and how you're going to be measuring success, and then break that down into your MVP requirements, then go into design. It'll be much easier for the designer to design based off of requirements, right, than say design this sort of nebulous thing, right? And some people do start down into development, which isn't necessarily the right approach.
One thing I might add is there's a phase in here that I might suggest you before you start developing the application. There's usually a discovery process that you go through to understand the scope of the development effort. So one of the things, because I've gone through this before, one of the things we wanted to determine is once we got down to the MVP is what's going to be required to build the cost.
Sure.
Is the technology available that we want to use?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We talk about that a little bit, but yeah, there's that discovery phase, also plays into what languages, what frameworks you choose, the developers you're getting kind of hooked up with, right? What does that look like? If you're doing, lightweight web apps, it's less important than if you're trying to build a artificial intelligence system, right? So front end, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, mobile developers. Today, that means, that could be mobile web, but if you're talking actual apps, it's probably iOS, which is Objective-C, or Android, which is Java. At Crowd Compass, we see a lot of iOS usage and less Android usage, which is interesting given the fact that there's all of these numbers and stats around how Android is the most predominant platform now. And they are by like shipping volume and numbers, but they're not by usage in app usage and time spent using applications. At the back-end side, you know, if you're talking server only, that developer is probably gonna be like Java, Ruby, Python, PHP, and full stack, that's somebody that does everything. And we'll talk about that in a second. Also, you might hear new technologies, like new languages thrown around. Go is new, it's from Google. Clojure, Scala, Lua, C, C++. C and C++ are obviously not new, and Haskell. So those might be thrown around, so don't let that put you off. Mostly those are server-side languages. So what's a full stack developer? Because that's the unicorn, right? That's the holy grail. What everybody's looking for is the full stack developer, because it makes life easy, right? You can hire one person and magic, poof, they can do everything. If a back-end developer says they're full stack, that means that they probably do some front-end, right? If a front-end developer says they're full stack, that means that they do some back-end work. If a mobile developer says they're full stack, or they typically say, you know, they can do everything, that means they can do some back-end work. And I think inside of there, you can see the encoding is that you're trading off those skill sets. You typically don't find someone that is equally good across everything they do. And so given your project and knowing your requirements, your minimum requirements, if it's really, really, really server heavy, probably want to get somebody that's a specialist there, right? That's more back-end developer than they are front-end developer.
This is what drives me crazy, is when I'm trying to find somebody or really understand what they do, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm a full stack developer. And then I go and look on Wikipedia, what does that mean? And I look at like LAMP stack and try to memorize what those terms mean. Let's see if I can do it. Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, thank you.
A little help from the crowd.
Yeah, thank you, a little love from the crowd. But, oh, you got the hello, okay, you want to jump back to that first slide?
All right.
Or the slide?
Just to check in.
Yeah.
There we go. He's got the Hello World server.
Okay, so Jackson has Hello World server up. Where is this?
On the left?
That's it. That is so anticlimactic.
That's it.
Hello, hello, hello. So, Jackson, first of all, you're doing backend here today?
Yeah.
And what are you building in?
Node.js.
Node.js.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk a little bit about that. JS.
Good luck.
JS stands for JavaScript.
Yep.
Node, what's the deal with Node?
I have no idea.
No, come on.
No, I don't know.
Node, is Node the thing? Is it not the thing?
It's Node.js is just what it's called.
Oh, so you're not building it in.
In nodes?
Yeah.
No.
What's he building this in?
tool.
JavaScript.
JavaScript.
Yes.
See, I'm totally confused, so I'm super excited we're going to get to this slide and we're going to sort this out. Okay, so this is being developed in JavaScript.
Yep.
Okay. And you did the Hello World
Yeah.
server. Damn it. I will pay you $1 if you do not show that again. That is Photoshop. For 48 hours, my wife thought that was a real picture. I was so upset. Yeah. Okay, so this is a MySQL server?
Postgres.
Postgres.
Yep.
Postgres is a type of database.
So you have to pick a database. You have to pick a server.
That's next though. We're not doing database yet. Database not hooked up.
Okay, so just server.
Yep. Just server.
You went with Postgres.
Yeah.
And there's
Why?
MySQL.
Why?
Why? Why did you go with Postgres?
I like it. It's cool and open source.
Postgres is open source.
Yeah.
So the only only other one I can even name is MySQL. Are there like a few others that people should know of, or is there just a billion and go look it up online?
There are an absolute ton. There's a different database for every job. Postgres or MySQL work really well for this specific job. I prefer Postgres. It's a little bit older, a little bit wiser. It's got some experience under its belt, some scars, and it just works well.
Why do you think it works better for this job
Then not like compared to what?
compared to MySQL?
It doesn't really work better than MySQL. I just like Postgres better.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've used it, you liked it, you trust it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mike,
Paul turned it off.
The hell?
That's a good example of the people you choose will influence your project, right? Like, little do you know they're making lots of small decisions, under the covers based on their prior experience, their favorites, their likes, dislikes. Some of that may matter, some of it may not matter. It's not necessarily stuff that you have to spell out, but you should just know, like in team selection, that's going to come into play. As a non-technical founder, that's probably impossible. Yeah.
Yeah, so the question was, how do I validate
Yeah.
this question of what server we use?
Yeah, like as a non-technical product founder, leader.
So
Yeah.
it is like you go out and find specific people, like know your mobile guy, know your server person, be able to go ask those questions, memorize, definitions so you can even have a conversation. And then the other big thing is, what'd you say?
Have the audience use that. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to know what's going into your project, even just if you look at it from a licensing standpoint, right? That they're using software that's properly licensed. If it's commercial, that you paid for it. If it's open source, that it's attributed, right? Like all of those things are actually important. So I think staying on top of that, like that's your responsibility as a project owner, and it's about plugging into where it matters and not plugging into where it doesn't matter and spending your time there.
Yeah, and then the biggest thing too is when you're picking your team,
Yeah.
who's going to make that decisions, make sure that person is fully vetted so you can just hand over a ton of trust to them.
I would try to get recommendations on past projects, make sure they finish them. Really, it's worth doing you're so excited to get started, and that's kind of why that slide was at the beginning, like start development, I'm not really ready yet. It's really important to get comfortable that they are going to execute well, right? Some of this stuff matters, some of it doesn't matter.
Here, let me give you the mic.
I'm asking this for a friend. I think it's very impressive that he got the Hello World server up and running in 20 minutes. My friend has no idea what the server is actually doing for this project, so maybe you can actually describe that a little more in detail, and not just why you chose Postgres because you like it more, but actually like compare it against not MySQL because it's the same, but actually against other databases. Why is that a good solution for this?
At this level, it actually doesn't matter what database solution you choose.
That's not true.
What is the database doing?
The database is going to be storing the name image pairs that the mobile client's gonna talk to. So the mobile application is going to be talking to the server that Jackson's writing. So Cody's app is going to be talking to Jackson's app, the backend, and it's going to be getting the names of the folks and the images that go along with those. And the names being like the response set. So like it'll give you 3 names, and you'll have to pick which name is correct based on that face that you're presented with.
And you're saying it doesn't really matter for this project because it's such a small
scale.
test run project. It's really it's such a small MVP
Yeah.
that it's what's the easiest
Right.
for the developers working
Right.
on it.
And so I don't disagree with Jackson's choice. It's what I would choose. But yeah, it's sort of that's why it's so hard as a non-technical product owner, project owner, is because it's not necessarily the choices matter today, they matter tomorrow. They matter downstream, like how things scale, what you want to do with them. And that's part of, when you put together the minimum viable product requirements, that gives the developers a view, that's like this. That project statement, that's the overarching direction, helps guide their overall decisions, right? And gives them a framework for making broader decisions like, okay, the goals of this are to actually deploy, to the world, right? Well, I have to make maybe a slightly different solution or choice than something that's going to be just deployed at a company. So, all right.
So, a little less. There we go.
You're good.
So anyways, got the initial project going. With any iOS app, you could actually just do new and start the simulator, and your app will run with a blank screen. But I did a little bit more. First of all, I wanted to talk about this. Just to get my mind right, I set the objects up, or the ideas that I'll be working with, and kind of the initial points that they'll be talking to the other objects. I'm going to start with the score view, and you're going to be able to start the quiz and go directly to the game and start seeing the employees and roll through them. I knew I needed something to manage that and talk to the server, so I had this game data to be able to talk to the server and be able to store each employee and each of the choices that go through. So I set this initial skeleton up inside this project with each one of my objects. In addition, I also started this UI. It's very crude, but I have this kind of image and these little objects that I can control and manipulate, but at a minimum, I can start, run, and I know at least I'm up and going. So from here, I'll start adding in a little bit of logic to start talking to the server and conversing with what Jackson's doing, and then come back in and tweak the UI a little more.
Can you show the UI again?
Yeah. So
that's where the image would be?
Yeah, what's highlighted in blue.
In blue, and then underneath it are the different names?
Yeah, so there'll be 4 employee names here, and then they could tap on which employee they think that person is, and it'll put a check mark next to that employee. When that happens, this top part will slide down and allow them to hit next to basically save their input.
Okay. Well, the question was, what program are you using?
This is called Xcode. This is Apple's free tool for developing these apps. In addition, I'm using OmniGraffle to lay out these diagrams. Say what?
Cody's going to work on focusing the projector while Dave moves on to the next slide.
All right. So Cody, that's a good segue. He starts laying out the UI. One thing that's really helpful, just like the minimum viable product requirements, right, is to have, for the design side, style guide, right? Something that's going to dictate a framework for making decisions. So when you go to your designer, probably a good idea to think about, colors and fonts and the nuts and bolts of your application so it can be consistent, right? Because you're building a path for that developer to succeed, so the less choices that they have to make in those areas, the more consistent your application is going to be. We just threw up an example here. This is, you can kind of Google search style guide and you'll come across a bunch of examples. This is the one from like the Easy company, like EasyJet and so on.
Yeah, this style guide was really good. The circle I've seen style guides all the way from one page, that you end up getting a little bit limited to compared to something like this. This will be online on the video if you want to look up the URL, but the EasyJet, Easy Everything company, their style guide is just really great. It's like 10 pages long, runs through all these different examples, be a great piece of collateral to be giving a front-end developer who thinks, if they're not really that good at design, but just need a little bit of help, or, the back end.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Like, so if you're developing native applications, there's kind of, those developers don't do just like one little piece. It's really, they are building the UI, and then sort of that middle layer that's going to talk to something like a server, or the app can be self-contained and then it stops right there. And they're capable of building a whole application that's not connected to the internet, not connected to the world. So they're essentially a little bit, they're front end and, mobile is front end in the middle tier essentially. Mm-hmm. So the style guide really, really helps out there. So now you're into, okay, so I've got the style guide, got the requirements. I'm starting to think about the team. Now there's technology selection. What are we going to build this in? There's all of these words that I've heard, right? Java, Ruby, Python, PHP, JavaScript. We just heard about Objective-C. What is that? That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, how do you make choices? This is kind of just a rough brain dump, drop down from my mind. Java is typically highly scalable, right? Lots of people do it. Millions of people in India are Java developers. It's the enterprise choice. If any of you know what that means, like corporate, big company. I think I saw a recent blog post that said sort of, you'll never see Java code that's brilliant or amazing, right? It's not inspiring. It just kind of gets the job done. So examples of frameworks: Spring, Drop Wizard, J2E, Java 2 Enterprise Edition, and Android are all examples of kind of packages that use Java that you might decide to choose.
Okay, so just to be clear, Java is a language.
Is a language.
Isn't Java used to develop Android apps?
That's what I have here.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And the frameworks that go with it, that you're saying Spring, Drop Wizard.
Those would be for like web applications. So like Gmail is written in Java, or used to be. A lot of the applications that you're using online, like you connect to your bank, right? All of the banking backend, all of when you go and search your transactions and post transactions at your bank, that's all probably Java, all of it, all the way back.
So explain me exactly what a framework is.
A framework is a collection of components that make the development faster.
Okay.
So they're written in the language. And it's scaffolding or framework. You think of a building, right? It's the thing that gets you started. It's sort of the outline of it.
Jackson, what was those things you called for frameworks? To help me understand what a framework is.
Lego?
No, it was like sketching out a painting. So a framework is essentially like sketching out a painting, and that you're just filling in the blanks in. So it's moving it forward. So you're not just developing everything from scratch. You're like laying in the framework. Mad Lib,
Yes.
That's it.
A framework, yeah. For Kevin, a framework is a Mad
Yes.
Lib.
Like I talked to Jackson, he's like, a framework is blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is that? I
Yeah.
don't understand.
Yeah.
So it's like a Mad Lib, right? The sentence is all queued up. You're putting in the adjectives. Happy, easy to go. So that's for you marketing people that are at my technical level. That's
That's
a
right.
framework.
And typically Mad Libs are all done in the same language.
How much? The question was. Say it again. Repeat the question.
The question was, how much has the viewpoint changed if you're approaching multiple platforms, right? So yeah, I mean, mobile's difficult, right? Coming to mobile, it's really driven by the use case. Who's going to use it? What's that engagement going to look like? Do we build it on the web only? Do we build it on the web and try to port it to native applications? Do we use a cover of frameworks that help us take the web to native applications automatically? That's usually the decision point. It's strictly relegated to mobile. As far as like the back-end technologies, Java, PHP, and so forth, is less of a concern about portability because it's going to sit on a server somewhere and run. Yeah. So
Wait, a question?
yeah.
What?
He's asking specifically about mobile, right? Like, how do you approach cross-platform mobile development? There's three approaches. One is you build everything on the native platforms. So like Cody's doing Objective-C in Xcode, building an iOS app. That's essentially like the hardest way. That gives you the closest to Apple's bare metal, like closest to the phone, runs fastest, has performance benefits, uses all of their tooling. There's no easy path to necessarily take that and go and make it an Android app. So you would have to then get a Java developer. Typically, you're not going to find a developer that's going to write Objective-C and Java. It's sort of like the full stack mobile developer. They don't really exist that much because both of those platforms are really specialized. And so you would have to go rewrite the application and maintain it. And it's really the maintenance as you go and think about your projects. It's not just the building it. It's the maintenance that really makes it difficult. So you're going to go build that again in Android and Java. The second way of doing it is just all web. You only build on the web. You leverage web technologies. You deliver that as a web page to a browser, and that browser happens to be a mobile browser. looks great, will work pretty well if you're connected. Won't
So
work.
you're talking about a responsive website
Yes.
that just collapses down to an iPad, collapses down properly.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I would recommend, but you could build it just specifically for mobile, right? If you wanted to just build a mobile experience and you didn't care about.
You didn't care if people were on the desktop
Right.
looking at it.
Right.
You want your first product out the door, just mobile.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I would typically, recommend trying to make it responsive and trying to build a full experience because there's probably users that will do that. But so that there's that approach. Nothing to install from the App Store. That's really nice. Distribution's easy. Maintenance is easy because you're not maintaining different applications and you've got, you don't have to have more developers. Trade-offs are performance and then some things you can't do on the web. It's really hard to take photos and upload photos. Right, it's really hard to interact with audio, contacts on the phone. Like web apps are sandboxed. So if you need any of that data that's on that user's phone, you're gonna have a harder time. So I like to think of it, Apple and Google are out innovating the web, and they will continue to. They're building things faster, but they're building them in their own, in their own playgrounds. Going in their own separate directions, which makes it really harder to take advantage of. And then the third way is frameworks that make it easy, that take web apps that you build and put those and package those up into an installable app. That's kind of the hybrid approach, right? It's a web app running on, the phone. Sometimes you can leverage some of the native capabilities.
Hey, do you want to? I think you have a slide actually on that. You want to just jump down and let's jump back up to this. Don't you have like a?
What's that? Yeah. Oop, that's the next slide. No, that's not WordPress. So
and here are the frameworks.
Yeah, here are the frameworks. So if you're looking for hybrid development, these are some of the biggest frameworks. There's PhoneGap, Corona Labs, and Appcelerator.
So Dave, I build a responsive web app, right? Essentially a responsive website, works on the desktop, crunches down to the iPad, crunches down nice to the phone. The design is beautiful because I hired a designer. The front end and the UI person helped out, and the front end developer, so it's great, right? And now I want it to be in the App Store.
Right?
Yeah.
So then you take something like PhoneGap that's going to let you reuse that development work, package it into an actual installable app. Their tools do it through Xcode, but kind of behind the scenes, right? They package that up. They give you an installable thing that you could go put on the App Store, market that, download that. You start there, and you've got something that's on the web, and then it's also an installable, right? You can send push notifications to it. Like you can start taking advantage of those capabilities from that standpoint. And you can build out more native code. Then you can go maybe contract out or get an Apple iOS developer or an Android developer to build in specific native hooks to do things, right? And and those frameworks also give you the web technology hooks into those components. There are.
You got to repeat that.
Yeah. So the question was, has anybody come up with a standard library that allows you to essentially write once and run everywhere on all the platforms? Corona is a little bit of that. It uses Lua, which is a different language than you'll probably find any developers using, but not that they can't use it, and that gives you some of that capability. It's very hard because the platforms are so divergent. So for basic things, it works. For more complicated applications, it won't work that well. You'll still end up doing a bunch of custom development, diverging along those lines, and then you'll end up with this weird hacky. Got some water. You'll end up with this weird hacky mishmash of the scripting language and then a bunch of native code when it would have been easier just to do it natively.
So I hear about PhoneGap all the time. I don't hear about these other two to wrap up a responsive website and make it a web app. Why am I hearing about PhoneGap all the time? Is it just because a lot of shops in Portland are doing it, or what's the difference between the three? If you can even tell me.
Appcelerator is probably one of the biggest commercial ones.
Okay.
Corona's the Lua that I mentioned. So it's a specific scripting solution, and PhoneGap's was the biggest open source.
Okay.
This is a little less anticlimactic now.
Okay, so you want to go back to that earlier slide, Jackson's? Gosh. Okay, so what is this we're looking at, Jackson?
Oh, and I did application endpoints too. I forgot.
So that's the database?
This, yeah, is the database.
So can you talk about the database and can you talk about applications?
Database.
That's the response from the database?
Well, I can. Okay. So I've got a database that's in Postgres and it's full of people, and so it's got everybody, all the employees of CrowdCompass are here in the database associated with an image of themselves. And essentially, what this app is doing is it's getting everything from the database, it's shuffling it around, getting random stuff, and then returning 10 of those people with a couple of different options embedded in there. So you can see this is going to be one question for the survey, and it's going to have like a picture of Lloyd Bell, lloydbell.jpg, and then there will be going to be a couple choices. You're going to be able to pick either Brad Laronde, Lloyd Bell, Chris Peftel, or Hannah Mayer, and obviously one is the correct answer. So that's what we've got going on at this moment, and the next step is to hook it up to what Cody's doing.
So this is not the database, but the response from the database?
Yeah.
And then what, can you talk about application endpoints? First
Yeah.
of all, what is it?
So an application endpoint, I'm hitting an endpoint here, so an application endpoint is that right there. So it's like a URL, like an address,
Okay.
like on your house.
Okay, I get it.
Yep.
I get it, because
Yep.
I know that. I have one of those.
Yes,
I have one of those.
You you have a house.
So that's it? All you do is put in the address?
Yeah, exactly. And then you
I
got
could do that.
Exactly.
So do you have one endpoint
There
are
in
three
an
endpoints.
application?
The people, I think some people giggled at the address. Do you want to explain the address?
It's called an address.
No, but the 1337.
In Node, it's really common to run on port 1337 while you're developing,
Right.
just for kicks.
But why?
What do you mean?
You don't know why?
Why? Oh, elite? Yeah.
I still don't get it. This is the problem with talking to nerds.
This is the inside track.
God, I sit here all day at work
Right.
and I never know what people
Yeah.
are talking about. It's horrible.
So what is so you want to explain that? I mean, yeah.
It means you're good, you're cool, you're
Yeah.
in the know, you're hip, you got it.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Raise your hand if you don't know what he's talking about. Please, come on, be brave. Thank you. Okay,
So
good.
those numbers,
Woo.
if they were letters, it would spell out LEET, which is short for elite.
Oh, like A is 1,
Yeah.
B is 2.
No. Like LEET. Anyway.
Woo! Moving on.
Yeah. Anyway. So and then the slash new, that's a route, and that's Great.
Like a new-
Okay.
Yeah.
A little more to show. So I got a little bit more to where it doesn't start directly on the score screen. It goes directly. I'm at least showing an employee at this time. I have my choices. I've added this alert that basically tells me that I've added an action that tells me I need to fill it in and complete it. In addition, if you're not paying attention, it'll happen really quick, but I also added a splash screen really fast, and an icon here. Had those pre-built in Photoshop. I just exported them as images and brought them into the project. In addition, I also brought in my networking library that I'll use to talk with Jackson's API and some other code that I built to kind of help me do things quicker and more efficiently. And now I'm ready to start talking to the network portion and get going and start showing actual names and processing on those.
You have 4 minutes.
Sweet.
Yeah, you got 4 minutes to finish it. Dave, next slide.
All right. Next slide. All right. So anyway, I've got a rundown. Definitely follow up with the slides. There's a rundown on kind of frameworks and languages and how you choose those. We talked a little bit about mobile
Wait,
framework
let's go
selection.
through those languages just to make
You
sure.
want to go through those?
Yeah.
All right, really quickly. We talked about Java. We didn't talk about Ruby. Ruby is faster to develop, a little bit
You just
light,
got it.
a little bit more lightweight.
Oh, there we go.
Typically, you'll find that's like a craftsman's language. People that are passionate and they will write a little bit more enlightened code. You'll find.
You can tell that Dave
But-
is a Ruby developer by his definition.
Python, more generous language. I think you'll find the most non-programmers program in Python. It's nothing negative. It's just
Ruby developers are incredibly good looking. Yeah.
Python's similar to Ruby. Django's a framework that you'll find in Python. PHP, super scalable. Like that's what Facebook started with, and they scaled it to whatever, 1 billion users. Get it done quickly, low barrier to entry. A lot of people started hacking around and building PHP sites. So you find a lot of super shitty programmers doing PHP. Not that you don't find great people doing PHP. I mean, again, like all of Facebook is built on it. So and they've got some great stuff under the covers from an engineering perspective. But there's definitely, if you've got, if on your project it's going to be a PHP developer, probably worth doing some extra vetting. JavaScript is primarily front end, but now we're seeing a lot of full stack JavaScript engineers, developers like Jackson.
Dave, we're doing this project in JavaScript.
That's correct.
Node.js.
Yes.
All right.
Excellent. He's paying attention.
And Meteor is the framework, but we're not using it today.
Correct.
That's the Mad Libs that works with Node.js.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fun thing is, what Jackson's done here, actually Jackson and Cody, what they've done here, in 45 minutes, right? I joked with him earlier in the day that literally like 10 years ago, we're talking 3 engineers and probably, or 5 engineers in like 3 months. Like that's the pace of innovation. We're talking like dramatically lower barrier to entry to get these projects going, which is really, really exciting. And there's a lot of democratization. If you go out there's a lot of ways to learn how to code. Coursera, courses online. Yes. Yeah.
Wait, repeat
I'm
the
gonna
repeat the question.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Are you
Yeah,
going to repeat it?
The real heroes are the people that are working in the open source community and contributing back the frameworks that make all of this possible. Yes, absolutely. Right. They're very, very dedicated people every day that are committing amazing things back to the community that advance the state of the art well beyond where it has been in the past.
You mean
And
those are people making contributions to GitHub?
Yeah. Yes, most of the open source code is going to be found hosted at GitHub.
That's a really great question. You'd be like, oh yeah, you ever made any contribution to GitHub? I do not know what that means. I've never actually seen it, but it's...
That is actually a really good question. Like as you're vetting developers, and you not just to have they contributed to open source, but you should ask for their GitHub repository because that's where a lot of developers store their code. There's public code up there. You can look at it. If they don't have one, it's not necessarily the end of the world, but they should be using Git, which is another tool. But if they have a GitHub repository, that's really easy to go shop that around to somebody that that knows something about development and get that. Yeah.
One more minute, finish
more
this, and then
more
let's.
check-in.
Are you guys getting closer?
So yeah, I pulled a pre-baked version out of the oven. So this is what the final result looks like. Someone tells you if it works.
So walk through it. Picture comes in. What's on the bottom?
Oh,
So
who's
explain
that?
it
Yeah,
for people who
yeah.
can't see it in the back.
So basically, an employee picture comes in, and there's 4 names below it, and you select the name that's associated with that person. And Kevin just happens to be here and is up on screen right now, and he's like the only person I know from Crowd Compass, so it's probably be the only one I'll get right. So I'll kind of run through this. It throws a check mark next to the one that you're selecting, and up at the top it has a next to basically save it. and then shows if you got it right or wrong. And as you're going through this, is basically tallying up your score to see how well you've done.
Can you move that to the far right of your screen or left of your screen? Yeah, just so more people over here can see it.
There you go.
Is that a little better?
If anyone needs to shift around, if you want to see it, feel free. It'll be up after for a minute too.
So yeah, I believe Jackson's sending 10 down, so we'll go through those, and once we're finally done, I'll be able to enter my name.
These are staff photos.
Crowd compass / face compass.
Now, once I'm done, it goes out and fetches everybody's scores. There's some old scores in there in the database that we needed to remove, but basically shows what everybody's been getting. So if your name's in there and your score is low, you need to go back and do it again and learn everybody's name.
Awesome.
Cool.
Look at that. It only takes 45 minutes to build an app, start to finish. All right, in fairness, a little disclaimer, we sent some images over last night and had I saw these guys having a panic 1-hour session before heading here today and slugging down a PBR. So, Dave, if you want to just end with just some thoughts on people for hosting, maybe just in like 30 seconds, let's take a question or two, but then we'll just wrap up, and if you guys can stick around for a minute and answer any questions, that'd be great.
Cool, yeah, so it's great. Like, you build this app in an hour. How do you, where do you send it to? Like, where do you deploy it? You've got the back end, you've got the mobile component. You need to evaluate services. You're going to hear cloud, like servers, not that you don't own, VPS, virtual private servers. So that's essentially like raw hardware in the cloud, like leased. Essentially, you're leasing time on someone else's hardware. You're going to hear Amazon Web Services. There are other newer solutions like DigitalOcean, Linode. Those two kind of compete for lower cost player, but they're great. Rackspace, Joyent, there's 1,000 of these. Do your homework, see what makes sense for you from a finance standpoint. We use Amazon, AWS, at Crowd Compass. Netflix uses AWS. Then there are other solutions that we're using here today. We're using Heroku that are platform as a service. And so what's the difference there? One is kind of raw hardware. You are responsible for setting it up and doing everything you need to. And platform as a service is designed to be easier for the developer because developers actually don't run servers. It's not their job, their main function. They don't run servers and configure servers and things like that. So these platform as a service, their whole approach is we make that easy for you. We put that all together, and it makes it easy for you to deploy that code. So Jackson just had to push the code, like send it up to Heroku, and it will automatically run his application. He doesn't need to, go on and spin up a new server and configure it and add his keys so he can log on to the server and then install all the software. It's ready to go. It'll do it for him. And so, Heroku, Parse, AppFog happens to be here in town. They're all platforms as service. That make it really easy. If you're building a mobile application and you need a back end, this is a really easy, fast way of going because a lot of them have, databases sort of all set up for you, pre-baked. It makes it easier to plug into. A little bit harder to scale. Long term, right? If you're going to launch and have this amazing success and it's going to go global, those are going to be difficult to scale.
Great. Let's just take 2 questions, and then we're going to break. We always go across the street and have a drink. Who wants to come on over and do that, that'd be great. Any questions from the audience here before we wrap things up for this hour?
Whoa.
That's when you know you've rocked it. Okay, I would like to just give a special thanks. Normally I have panelists that show up and just answer questions, and we have a fun time. We did that today, except these guys actually had to prep stuff in advance, run around with their heads cut off, and Dave, thanks for getting together all this information. This video is going to be recorded and put on the Innovation in Motion page, so if you want to go back and look at little pieces, write down words, learn how to speak nerd, you are welcome to do so, but maybe if we can just give a special round of applause to our panelists for putting this all together. Okay, again, thanks for the sponsors. If you need video, talk to Paul. And everybody, we usually head across to the ship, which is 5 feet across the street here. And come on over and have a beer. And Kevin Starkewell from Crowd Compass said he was buying tonight for everybody. Thank you.